Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that will just wear a wig. Instead of cutting our hair, we don't need to do that.
I'm Miranda Simmons.
Yeah, but you got to do something because you're in a context. You got to look the part.
You're a camera person. You gotta,
going into a Pentecostal tent revival.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk about Marjoe with you. But tell the fine folks who we are first, Mike.
I'm Mike Altman, and we are two religious studies professors trying to understand all of these cult documentaries that you can't stop binge watching. And if you want to support the show and help more people find us,
help them find us.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Cult Favorite Pod, or on YouTube. We're on YouTube too. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and a review. Did you know? You might not know.
Probably not.
I got an email. Apple Podcasts, which is the majority of our listenership, uses Apple Podcasts. They're getting video now, so soon the videos that are on Spotify and YouTube will also be on
you
your.
You don't have to go to another place. It's
Apple,
all streamlined.
All right there.
All right there.
Which is why I wore my new shirt today.
Oh, what is that? Wait, why?
What? Because it's on video.
Because
there's a camera. Yeah.
I thought it was like, what does that have to do with Apple streamlining things?
No.
Okay.
I just. I put this on. Those of you who know the American Examples project I worked on will recognize the color scheme of this t-shirt.
I do not often wear a t-shirt with script on it. I'm not one for a graphic tee.
Oh, yeah.
But today I have one about, ask me about my karaoke song.
What's your karaoke song?
Oh, well, it doesn't mean actually ask me about it. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
It's a lie.
Favorite duet is either Jackson or Summer Lovin' from Greece. Unless I'm singing with one of my very favorite scholars and critics, who is a media theorist and a literary critic, and we always do a power ballad together.
Good.
Yep.
So yes, no content warnings. We're talking about Marjoe, which 1970.
Is it a soft J? Is it Marjoe? Is it Marjoe?
I guess it's Marjoe. I don't know. It
doesn't matter. Okay. I just didn't want to mess it up.
Marjoe.
I thought it was Marjoe.
I think it is Marjoe. I think you're right.
I don't know.
I just try to make it sound fancy.
Well, I feel like you are much more the expert on this movie than I am. This is the first time I've seen it. I knew what it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so I'm very excited about it.
I'm excited. Yeah.
This is from 1972.
It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary.
Yeah.
Which
is interesting because it's not really a documentary in the classic sense of like, I will teach you about this thing. It's really kind of a behind the scenes, like in the way that we tend to do a lot of, I don't know. It's sort of like The Office or something, like those kinds of, it's not reality, but it's also not scripted, but it's also, it's kind of
it's way ahead of its time. I think that's probably why it won the Academy Award, because it was like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
I actually did a deep dive. I'll put a couple links in the show in the show description if I remember. But there's a couple things from Sarah Kernochin, who was one of the directors, along with Howard Smith. The whole thing has a really interesting story. I guess I'll do this part now.
Okay.
I was going to do it as but we'll use it as a segue into the actual thing. So Marjoe Gortner was the son of two revivalists, Pentecostal revivalists, who started preaching at the age of 4.
Yes.
When he was like 3, his parents recognized that he could memorize things really well, and was a very good performer. And so,
what time is this? Like, what kind of year are we talking?
I want to say it was like late 50s, early 60s. It
would have been late 40s, I think, right?
Was it that far?
Because he was born in the mid 40s, so this would have been like if he was 1948. So this wasn't even.
It would be. You're right, because he was born in 44. So there you go.
So we're talking about a very specific time in like Pentecostal history as well.
And it's a time, which I think one of the things, I had not thought about the film as a Pentecostal film per se.
Oh, interesting.
When because of the way I came into the way I encountered it.
Literally all of my notes in what do you want to talk about is I'm interested in your interest. So we're going to get there. I've got things to unpack.
So Gortner starts, and like his parents were very good. Well, I think what's interesting is we're talking about the late 40s. This is before Billy Graham.
Yep. But after like Amy Semple McPherson.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is also a time when kind of fundamentalism and Pentecostalism are still kind of underground in American society.
Lots of tent revivals happening, right? Yes. Traveling preachers.
This is the time. Actually, this is the time. I have an uncle who's about Marjoe's age, because Marjoe's 82 now. I have a great uncle who grew up and inherited a tent revival at about the same time, like, so part of this whole and down in South Georgia. So like, yeah, that's all. So, but we are not yet at the, like, this documentary comes out in 72. It's 76 when Nixon is running as an evangelical, and when you have the year of the evangelical in Time Magazine and Gallup and all of this stuff. George Gallup coins it the year. So like, we're before the rise of the religious right.
Yes.
In popular media.
Yeah, way before. Yeah.
And we're still in that era of because after 1920s, the fundamentalist modernist split. This is why you should take American history class, everyone. But after that split and like the Scopes trial, you can go Google that. Fundamentalists kind of go underground. They start building their own networks, and they're not in the public eye in the same way. And so this is part of that. But his parents were very good promoters.
They were show parents.
Yeah, they
get him to do stage mom.
They get him to do a wedding in California at the age of 4.
Yeah,
and it goes on this
which we see clips of
Paramount News. It's on a Paramount newsreel.
Yeah.
And that's how he really starts. And he starts selling albums, and he tours around. He does this for about 10 years, and then it's adorable to watch a 5-year-old preach, apparently, but not a 14-and-a-half-year-old. At that point, it's a little murky. They really try to hide this, and I did some digging, and I haven't found a lot just when I was digging around, but like, basically his dad absconds with around $3 million, he claims, that his dad had, that he made. And his parents kind of, it sounds like, abandon him, and he winds up being taken care of by a variety of kind of bohemians. Well,
he's
California.
Also a teenager, and he's kind of rebelling. He's, like, he's already been on the preaching circuit now for over a decade. And so he's wanting to find himself too. I wasn't really sure, about like who's leaving who. I know that his dad took off with money. But then as I understood it, it's like he's also this teenage searcher who's trying to go find his what am I actually up to, and what am I doing? Yeah.
And so
he becomes a hippie.
Yeah. So at the age of, like, in his late 20s, like 27, 28, he decides to go back on the preaching circuit for a couple years because he needs money, but is no longer, as he says, like, believes any of it. It's just knows the technique, knows how to give the sermon, knows how to get the rise of the climax in the room. And I think in his mind, one of the, I think, interesting things about the film is you hear him talk about the stuff he thinks is good, which is sort of, he talks about if religion helps you get off, that's awesome.
Right.
So he really kind of values the experience.
Religion is a drug.
Pentecostal, right? Well, and actually that comes up
later.
So what happens? The documentary happens because he's in New York, trying to figure out. He wants to get into acting.
Yeah,
and he Howard Smith, who is had a radio show in New York, writer, does a lot of things. He goes to Howard Smith with his scrapbook of his childhood story. And was like, I have this story. I think this could be something.
Yeah.
And
I was wondering how that
Smith takes it home. His girlfriend, partner at the time is Sarah. Shoot, I just said her name. Now I lost it. The other director, Sarah Knochin. Sarah Knochin was, and there's an interesting interview that I read with her that I'll put in the notes where she tells the story. But like, basically, he came home with that and was like, I only interview celebrities. I'm not going to interview this guy on the radio show. But she sees this thing as like, we could make something with this. And so she's a very young woman. She talks about this, a very young woman who's looking to break into filmmaking and other artistic stuff.
Right.
And so and Howard's much older than her. She basically pushes to do this, and sort of Howard, it from her telling, it comes across that Howard Smith gave his name to the project in order to get it funded and made.
Okay.
But she did all the work.
Sure.
And no one really recognized it till long after. 1972, she wins the Academy Award. They win the Academy Award for Best Documentary with the documentary. It was never released south of Des Moines, Iowa.
Interesting.
The distributor was very nervous about a backlash.
Sure.
And so it was only released up north. There was not a lot of promotion, but it got a ton of really, like, Roger Ebert wrote a glowing review when he saw it at a festival. It got all these great reviews. It then disappeared and was no one knew where the original film was. It was held by the distributor. He died. It got bought by another production company who then was in bankruptcy. And so finally in 2002, Kernocian was working at some film lab that had bought a bunch of various failed production company archive. Like, it would just buy all the stuff, and somebody there was like, "Hey, we're actually cleaning out the archive." And she goes, "Hey, if you see anything that says Marjoe on it, let me know."
Right.
And this guy shows up with the entire box full of all the negatives, all of the trailers, all of the outtakes.
Interesting.
Like, basically the whole production box, and it had all been preserved in temperature controlled, climate controlled space for all of these years.
Interesting.
And so in 2000, they found that in 2002, and so in 2005 that came back out on DVD. And that's where it comes out in 2005, right in the midst of, like, George W. Bush administration, religious right, and takes off as a kind of critique of evangelicalism.
Yeah.
Gets picked up by Netflix at one point. It's not on Netflix anymore. It's not, but, like, it has had in the last 20 years.
See it? Tubi?
It's on Tubi. You can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
I have I have the DVD. But it kind of had the last 20 years. It has had a whole new life. Yeah. In a kind of post-evangelical moment that I think is really interesting, which is also not how I watched the film. But
there is an interesting an interview with Kernocian on Vice.
Yes,
you saw that. Okay, you've been reading that.
I'll post that one.
Yeah,
that was one of it. And then she wrote a blog post that was on, like, her personal blog and on, like, maybe the Daily Beast or something that tells some of the same story.
Right.
But, like, so the documentary itself is opens with the story of Marjoe, which his name is part of Mary and Joseph put together, which is portmanteau. Fun.
Yeah.
And he tells his story of his childhood preaching, like we just talked about, and then it cuts to him in a hotel room with this film crew, talking about, like, what he's going to do. And so you're immediately, the whole premise is, I'm going to show you how these revivals work. And then the film is there's 4 meetings. I think it was Dallas, Chicago. I'm trying to remember. There are 4 cities they went to with him. And it's sort of video that they take in a very kind of fly on the wall, like, if you've ever seen, have you seen Holy Ghost People, the 1940s documentary about Pentecostal snake handlers?
No, and we're gonna talk a little bit about
so that's another interesting
ambivalence about these.
But it's that
representation,
same tight zoom on people's faces. Let's capture the experience of it.
Totally.
What is this? And because
it's highly physicalized.
Yes.
It's highly, like,
one reviewer talks about it having as sort of a kind of latent pornographic element to it, in the way it's shot.
Sure.
And I think. So you have those scenes of the revivals and those scenes of him sort of doing the sermons and the reactions, and then there'll be these cutaways to sort of one-on-one interviews with him where he kind of talks about how it works and what's going on and the different aspects of it. There's a couple scenes. My favorite scene
what is your favorite scene?
is the one where he's with the other preacher and his wife, and they're talking about how, like, they're talking about how much they appreciate him because he takes care of their people and people respond to him and they can bring him back. There's so many preachers that you can't bring back. but they're also talking about other preachers who have magazines and missions trips and sort of the larger. It is the larger kind of infrastructure and early publication networks that are happening around American Pentecostalism. And it's just an interesting, he kind of makes the point that like you don't really make the money off the revivals. Those are for the personal connections. You make the money off of the radio shows and the magazines.
Why is that your favorite scene?
Well, so yeah, like so that's the film. I mean, it's not a plot per se. There's no big reveal. There's no big
he's
climax.
Talking to the film crew about like, here's what you need to do and be in order to get access into these spaces. Here's how the people will treat you. This is when he tells somebody with long hair, like, you need to cut your hair. And he's like, what if I just wear a wig? And then like,
and
he's like, okay, I guess you could do that. Somebody who's smoking a cigarette, you got to not smoke while you're there. No drinking, no picking up girls. Like, there are these rules of engagement, and he's kind of this insider participant inside the Pentecostal movement who's explaining that group to the filmmakers, but he's also inside the film crew creating a path of access for them with these congregations. So he's sort of this in-between mediator between these two worlds.
And one of the things that's interesting too is like, this is possible because a lot of these revivalists were welcome to have a film crew come film their revival. Even after the film came out, one of the revivalists, rather than being, because the film is posits itself as a kind of debunking, because there's all these scenes about how these people make money,
right?
And there's these scenes, Marjoe pouring a bag of money on the bed, or there's one there's a scene early on after the first revival they show where you see him and the other preacher, because Marjoe's is traveling, he's always the kind of guest that gets brought in, and they're counting the money. Apparently that shot was they used a long lens from down the hall, and the other guy didn't know Marjoe was still mic'd the whole time they shot this scene. But you hear them talking about the money and talking about, oh, that was a great climax there. And
we get his behind the scenes like chat about the performance aspect of all of this.
And he talks about working in like a business,
you work a crowd
and all of this. And so there's a kind of like, oh, these are all hucksters, just taking these people for their money element kind of under, and that's how it was. Is most often that is how the movie is read, I think. So there is that kind of debunking approach to it as well. So on the one, but so anyways,
because I mean, if you take seriously what they understand as the Great Commission, then any kind of representation of your movement is necessarily spreading the message, and that's what evangelicalism is charged with doing, is spreading the message to others by any means necessary.
And so
they've long embraced technology, cameras.
So the film came out in 1972, even after the fact, and it was, people were worried about people getting mad. One of the revivalists from the movie actually put, come see so and so part of the, like, basically used the film to promote his revival even after the fact, which I think is kind of to your point. But like, so the majority of the film is this back and forth of him explaining kind of how it works with the scenes of the different revivals. But and then at the very end we get some time with his girlfriend at the time, Agnes, where he's a very kind of clear about the kind of this feeling of living kind of two lives of like the revival, and having it literally changing out of like his hippie tie-dye on the plane into a suit to show up at the revivals and all of this.
Yeah, sure.
And that's kind of where, he talks about it, religion is a drug. You hit on that to the point that he tried,
Can God deliver a religion addict?
Yeah. Well, he tried at one point to basically, I think he thought that would get him blackballed and he'd never be able to preach again. And that's what he needed to be able to stop. Like when he says like religion is a drug, I think the performative element of it was so central to who he was that he literally said like he wanted to stop doing it, and the only way he knew he would not go back to it was to sort of out himself and try to get blackballed. Which
I'm glad you said the word performative. I want to talk about that, but first.
So yeah. So I mean, that's the gist of the documentary, and more details to come up. But it's not a narrative. It is not a narrative-driven documentary.
No,
It is a like take an hour and a half and be in this space.
Go behind the scenes
and hear from
with
this guy.
Evangelical worship, and have someone explain the mechanics of it to you.
Yeah.
Why do you said that you've used this movie a lot in classes, you have the DVD, you liked it. You've been talking about this one for a long time.
Yeah.
Like since we have started this podcast, you have said on multiple occasions, well, we should talk about Marjoe. So like, what do you like about this movie? Why do you find it so useful? And why does it fit with our conversations about so-called cult documentaries?
Ooh, the last question is tricky. No, I think so. First thing, there's the moment for me that I was like, oh, okay, was there's a part where one of the cutaways was just him, and he says like, you got to have a gimmick.
Right.
He's like, you got to have a gimmick. He's like, there's, they call it a ministry, but whether it's the laying on of hands or whether it's the speaking in tongues or the prophesying, like you got to have a gimmick.
Sure.
And then you've got to work it like a business. So I think what was interesting from my perspective is that whole framing is easily like compared with and can be put alongside the way like professional wrestling works.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, who is interested in religion and wrestling, not just at the like, representation of religious identity or whatever, but at the like, how might looking at the way wrestling works as a kind of cultural form help us understand how religion works as a cultural form. That line, like this film really puts those side by side. And so for me, it's a way, especially around that idea of the gimmick. It's a way to think about how do like he's opened the space to think about gimmicks and religion and how are they similar or different from gimmicks in professional wrestling, right? And gimmicks in larger other cultural situations, this split between the kind of performative self, right, and the kind of real self. But there's scare quotes. If you're not watching the video, I'm scare quoting the real.
Yeah, but I'm gonna push you on that performative word in a second. But keep going.
Okay. Maybe there's a better word. I'll be happy for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even the word work has a very specific meaning in sort of wrestling jargon.
Working an audience.
And so there's that piece of it, but there's also in the moment, like he's doing pro wrestling. Like there's a part early in the movie where, or I guess it's midway through, it's with one of the big outdoor revivals, and he's talking about people who, there's these people that are going to holler for any reason. That's not the spirit. That's carnal. And he's not getting anything back from the audience. He's like, you all don't like hearing me say that, but it's true. And then he shifts and he takes he shifts to a different topic.
He's got a costume. He's got props, his handkerchief.
Yeah. And
sure. So he's a character.
And so, but there's also that live crowd reaction.
Yeah.
And that live crowd response.
Yeah.
And improvisation.
Yeah.
That is also, I think, a piece of it, and that kind of effective moment. So there's something about how that is different from other kinds of performances, but that I think is very similar to kind of the wrestling world.
Is there anything that isn't? Is there any sphere of social exchange wherein there is not such a thing that we might call gimmick? Like, is there any place that gimmicks aren't used? Like, I'm wondering about, because you said that like these two things are connected by use of gimmick, and I don't disagree. Because when he said that, I was like, oh, I know why Mike likes this film. I know this has got Mike written all over it. But I wonder about the extent to which a concept like gimmick implicitly suggests something that is not gimmick, that there is authentic, real communication, or like the way you and I are talking right now, and that's legit. Like I am spontaneously thinking of ideas in relation to what you say, and this like interesting back and forth and whatever. Right. But we also have a framework, and we've got some lights, and we've got these microphones, and we do 10 seconds of silence from the front end, and there are all these production elements that we might talk about. Yeah. And so does gimmick point to something regarding artifice that is itself as a concept suggestive of a real that I think you and I might complicate a little bit? Like where is there not gimmick?
I think the key thing about gimmick, and it's why I think it is different than just performance.
Okay.
And this is Cien and Guy's book, Theory of the Gimmick. My favorite book. Right. I keep talking about it. But this is her point, is that the idea of the gimmick is directly related to political economy.
Okay.
And so the point of the gimmick is always to extract, is to get money out of the audience.
Okay.
Right. And so I think that's the difference, right? Okay. And so the gimmick is not just a performance.
Okay.
It is a performance. So on
there's transactional
exchange. So for Guy, it's about the gimmick is the thing that overpromises and underdelivers, right? And so and for her, the label gimmick is an aesthetic judgment of it's an aesthetic judgment, and it's an aesthetic judgment in a kind of Kantian way where it's like, I'm saying it either actually to another person or at least to an imagined, like I'm saying that is a gimmick. It's my judgment of that, right?
Yeah. Who decides that something is being underdelivered? Like if a preacher's message is about my salvation, and I go on to believe that for my whole life, like how?
That's why it's not a category. It's like an aesthetic judge. It's like a way we judge. Okay. In her case, art, most often. Yeah. But it's not like. This is whenever I teach this, students are always like, so that's a gimmick. I'm like, no, the gimmick is the judgment you make of a thing. Okay. It is not the thing itself. It's it's your second order experience of the piece, of the object. Got it. Right. And so like when he says everyone has, and this is the tricky part, and where I'm trying in my stuff to move a little bit past just that piece of it when it comes to this category, this idea of the gimmick. But I do think that, the reason you have a gimmick in wrestling is it is either a shortcut to make something safer, like I gimmicked that chair so it didn't hurt as much when I got hit with it, or it is the character I inhabit in order to draw money. So that gimmick draws money. So this is why I say that you have the same gimmick with different actual people inhabiting the same character sometimes, because the gimmick makes money. Or the gimmick is if I have my table full of t-shirts and autographed pictures that at intermission that I'm trying to sell, that's my gimmick table. Like these are things, right? And so I think it is about, on one level, I think it is about exchange, but it's also about an exchange that is often deceptive. That's the sort of overpromising, underdelivering. Okay. So I think that's the piece. So it's not just the performance element. I think it's much more about a kind of economic mode that I think is not only works for Marjoe or pro wrestling, but for Instagram influencers and TikTok brand deals, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, one of the things that I liked about this movie, or one of the ways that I think it works, I guess, for me, is that there are so many different layers of and degrees of separation from something called authenticity.
Yeah.
And and the performance too. So this is where I'm gonna like pull at some strings around that word performative, because I think that a lot of times when we use the word performative, we conflate, we use that to mean performance and something fake. Right. And you're just being performative. You're not being real.
Yeah.
But for me, as a theorist, like taking performativity seriously as a technical tool, as something that Judith Butler introduces in the early 90s as something to give us language to talk about the ways in which our social performances are the thing that consolidate a semblance of, an impression of, but it's only ever a semblance of stable identity.
Yeah.
So performance, and so in that way, it's not fake, it's not performance. Performance is something that implies an actor behind the scenes. Like if once I take this costume off, now I'm the real me.
Right.
But performativity asks us to think about how every single moment that I am being me, I am being, that being is brought to us by way of performing me.
Yeah.
And that's informed by all sorts of social scripts and norms. And so we are always about the business of consolidating a semblance of self to ourselves and to others. And that's why I can say, like, Mike, you don't seem yourself today. Like, what does that even mean? How can you not be yourself? But it's because you're not performing the scripts in the way that you typically do.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it messes with what we might want to call the real or the authentic self, or because I think that a very surface reading of Marjoe Gortner is, and they bring up this category of like con man. They ask his girlfriend, like, do you think he's a con man? Whatever. A surface reading would suggest that here's this con man evangelical who's pulling the wool over the eyes of these unsuspecting parishioners. And here's the real Marjoe, who is, or like that's, you know, like he's a hippie, but he's also this preacher. And these are two different selves.
Yeah, that's how he articulates. I'm leading two lives. Right.
But if it had just been that, if that's what I had seen, I would have found the movie really exhausting and kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And I do have some things to say. I have lots of ambivalent feelings, most of them resentful, about the ways that a lot of times we can represent Pentecostals in an exoticized way that makes them the sort of weirdos beneath the umbrella of Christianity.
Yeah.
And I don't love that. I think that can happen so easily and quickly. But so if it had been that, I would have just been like, oh, cool, like another representation of wacky Pentecost. Okay. But
this is why I never watched Jesus Camp.
Man. But we'll get back to that. Put a pin in that, and then I'm going to ask you about some more contemporary media later. But instead, like what I also saw, so this kind of tension between these two selves or senses of self or whatever. But there was also what seemed to me, lest I presume his intentions or authenticity or whatever, but there is this relationship between him and his parishioners. Like the people who are listening to him and the people that he's praying with and over, like, I don't, like he said at one point, if I wasn't doing this, I guess I'd be a rock star. Like he does like being on stage and performing.
Yeah. He borrows from Mick Jagger.
But does it mean that Mick Jagger like isn't a musician? You know what I mean? Like he is a musician. Like, yeah,
that's one of the points that shows
just because you're performing a thing doesn't make the thing So, and if I thought that was, this is what I'm doing to mess with these folks because they'll give me money, then it would have just been like, here's an expose of him, not an expose of the fakeries embedded within religious whatever. The fact that it worked as, or the fact that they could somehow call it like that, that's what they're doing, that it's this kind of weird critique of religion or whatever, is that those moments of interaction with people at the tent revival, I found really compelling.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
I think that when someone makes this point, and I think it's in that Vice article, about like, well, isn't it possible that even if he doesn't believe the stuff he's saying, because he's really big on like, I wish I didn't have to talk about hell.
Yeah.
Like, I have to talk about hell because if you don't talk about hell, it doesn't work.
Yeah, because he's like, the Jesus stuff I'm into. The group, he calls it like a form of group therapy or something, right? Like, that's okay. Like getting together and expressing ourselves and sharing feelings.
The hell stuff, right? But he knows
hell stuff is a bummer.
But he knows that you actually,
but you got to do it.
You need the hell stuff. Like the hell stuff is there can be no that actually. And
interesting. I thought that he meant, at least my read of that was that we don't need hell. The critique of religion for him, as I read it, was it's a bummer that we feel like theology requires a literal hell in order to compel people to be here and share space like this, because the being here and sharing space like this is really nice and helpful.
Yeah. I think that's right. And I think he regrets. I think he's like, I have to talk about hell because that's what the audience expects.
Right.
And so I can't do this without that. I would add the extra layer of, I don't think the experience works without hell.
Interesting.
Because that's what provides the stakes.
But then why does it work at a like concert where you feel some sort of cathartic release? Why?
Because I think that's just a different context.
Okay.
I think part of the like I think it might produce the same effect.
Yeah.
But I think that part of the recipe in the tent revival is the feeling of it is a release that requires a primary like problem to be solved, right? And so it's like you have to have hell in order to have a sense of what you are now gaining and to then get the thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a rock concert is different for a variety of reasons. The stakes going into it are different, all that. But, and also like as much as there are similarities, I think the important differences highlight this, like the laying on of hands and the
just human contact,
all of that. Yeah, that is. It's just. I just think it's like in a slightly different register.
Yeah, because I think that it's really patronizing or analytically arrogant to presume to like explain when people say they're filled with the Holy Spirit. Here's what's really happening.
Right.
Like I don't want to be guilty of that at all. I think that what's one of the things that he shows, or his just persona shows, perhaps in spite of itself, perhaps like in spite of the very thing that he says he's doing in the film, is that he has done this for so long that he does build relationships and community with these people that he knows that then give him. That's why he feels guilty about it in the first place. It's like, I got to make money, but I wish I didn't have to. You know, I've lost my faith. I don't really believe this stuff anymore, but I do love interacting with people.
And one reading of the film is that he is not tricking these people into giving him money with a sermon. It's that they are paying him for the experience of the revival.
Yes, and he talked about, and I think this is really important to keep in context as well, is that instead of it just being, because we hear from that, you know, that woman who is like asking for money And then there's like a zoom in on her necklace.
There's a mention of that in the article that the cameraman did that on his own. Like that was like just a great shot.
Okay. Like there is this sense of, and we've talked about before, the phenomenon of like the prosperity gospel being a rhetorical framework for the conspicuous consumption of preachers and televangelists making a lot of money. But for Marjoe, he is going through those motions to make a living for sure. But he also talks about how, as a boy, like he's very much on the exploited end of that transactional exchange.
Yes.
Like he's doing a lot of work. He's getting, like they have a lot of really harsh techniques to make sure that he memorizes his sermons in very particular ways, and that he knows the motions and knows the way to move his body to get so he is working so hard. He's the hardest working boy in showbiz and is making his parents a lot of money, but that he never sees. And so for him to be exploited by the very apparatus that then he extends into this adult form is something that also complicates what otherwise might seem like, I don't know, some kind of like some Sacha Baron Cohen kind of spoof of like, let's go and pull the wool over their eyes.
That's what separates him from Kamare that we talked about last time a little bit. I mean, and Knochin made a point in one of the interviews that like they decided in her first outline of the edit, she was very clear that we should not see adult Marjoe until 10 minutes into the movie, because it was so important to hit on his childhood. Otherwise, the audience would turn on him from the beginning.
That stuff was, I mean, I get it. Like it's really compelling. And it's really like interesting to watch, especially in the marriage ceremony. Like there is this very specific, very particular kind of verbal patterning, cadencing, intonation, and ways that, and so to see him performing that so effectively as a little boy, and to then understand, like the harm that did to him, that then he also, so he's lost his faith, but he can't quit the performance. Yeah. And there's something really complicated and tender about that.
And also when he says that he's a religion addict.
Yeah, can God deliver a religion addict?
Yeah, what he means is he's addicted to that performance. Yeah, right. Like totally. For him, that's what religion is. No, religion is that stage show.
Totally. But then, like even when he was performing that kind of thing, and then they're laughing and whatever. But with like he's playing with his dog.
With the dog, yeah.
Right, and I guess I never felt like, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. I'm not, and this is, I guess, where I want to pull the pin out of like contemporary media. Like I want to ask you a question, and see if you agree or not. But I will say first that, rightly or wrongly, I guess I never felt, maybe he's a con man. I don't know, whatever. Like, sure, I guess. He's definitely doing things under false pretense.
Yeah.
But I also never felt like he was making fun of anyone.
No.
And I don't know if that's me being too generous. That may be too generous of a read. I never felt like he was making fun of anybody.
You mean the audience by anybody?
Yeah. Yeah. I never felt like he was like, these poor assholes, am I right? Even as he was just kind of explaining the paces. Yeah. This thing has an embodied mode of behavior that is attached to the theology that is being shared.
It's a lot of technique. It's like
there's a lot of technique.
Technical explanation of things.
I don't subscribe to the theology anymore, but this is a technique that I'm really good at, and I'm going to explain it to you, film crew. And you're going to see it in action in a way that produces these real effects with this audience. And so I never felt like from him there was a kind of like, these poor jokers, let's go get them. And that was really important for me as an audience member.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether I would extend the same generous reading to the producers, filmmakers, crew. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So this is my question about contemporary media. Did you watch, I know you've told me this before, but I've forgotten the answer. Did you watch The Righteous Gemstones? Were you
I have not watched. I've heard about like people keep bringing it up to me.
And you probably aren't watching it because it's like a little too close, maybe, right? Or is it a...
No, I just haven't had time to get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to watching it. It's just not usually it's just not a thing I've had time to watch.
I will not go into it then in depth. Suffice it to say,
I saw the first episode.
It was a show that in a lot of ways worked for me until the very, very, very end did not work for me.
Sounds like Lost.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
Or the final season of Arrested Development once it got like...
I don't, those are not canon. I don't believe in those.
To me, that like once, and I've told you this before, I think maybe even like in one of our episodes.
Yes.
Arrested Development doesn't work for me once the family loses the money.
Yeah.
Once they become human, that gimmick doesn't work anymore.
Right. Yes.
That technique is lost. So similarly, The Righteous Gemstones is about this very wealthy family who are also very terrible people, terrible people who are, but funny, hilariously terrible, that whole thing. These anti-heroes who are actively participating in a performance of evangelical Christianity that makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
And while we become compelled by the characters, what is compelling about them is just how hilarious they are in their horribleness. They're all just like absolute train wreck human beings. But then at the end, there is this sort of, I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say, that there's this kind of like, I don't know, everybody's really actually okay on the inside kind of thing. And there's love and connection here, even despite how horrible we are to each other.
Yeah.
We really love and connect and blah, 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 blah.
So it is like the end of Lost.
Did not work for me because it's like, I don't want to be binary in my thinking or in my own representations of folks. It's not that you are, again, either a con artist or an authentic rendering of a theology. However, it's like, no, these work as anti-heroes because I'm always seeing them exploit their congregation. Right. I always see them working this audience for their own gain.
Yeah.
I always that is always at the front so that there's never anybody being confused about like, are these really actually maybe good-hearted people who really actually... And so as soon as we do that, I think it actually creates that binary of like, you can be this exploitative horror show of a person in power, but as long as you really love your siblings, you're also this real person inside. And it has that essentialist logic of, at my core, I am this. But and undermines the performativity that I was talking about that I find really compelling. I think it's a better way to think about identity. I think it's a better way to think about the ways that something called selfhood works.
Yeah.
Is that it's not this is what I do, but here's who I am inside.
Right.
And for Marjoe, I thought that he really muddied those waters, even if not intentionally. Maybe it was just because, again, there so much sediment had built and built and built over all of these decades that it's like, it's not here's what I perform at tent revival, but here's who I am on the inside. It was more like who I am as a performer.
Yeah.
Who I am, how I understand myself is someone who likes connecting to people. Here's what that looks like in this context.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I think that's right. And I think one of the reasons that I like the film so much is that it's funny. Whenever, like, if I go to, for whatever reasons in my days of my life, I end up in like a mega church situation. Like, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but having grown up a pastor's kid, I can watch a church service and kind of do what Marjoe does in this film. Like, I can tell you what's happening and why they're doing it and how they're doing it and why this is set up this way, right?
Sure.
And so I think I appreciate that, like, that aspect of the film, just because I kind of like identify with it.
Sure.
And one of the things I think that's funny that I've been noticing lately, and I'm trying to figure out how to tackle it as an intellectual project and not, is like, so like the dog at the end of the film, if you haven't, go watch it. It's very short, but at the end of the film, he's doing this whole bit about with this dog.
He's preaching
in the woods,
to the dog.
Where, can God save a dog? And I'm going to baptize this dog. And blah, blah. And he's and what I realized is, like, to put it bluntly, because I love putting things in these sort of pithy ways. I've often said that, like, Billy Graham was the first evangelical, if not the only evangelical, because, like, that's a whole historical argument, and, like, I know Tommy kids out there are going to argue with me about this, but, like, the category of evangelical as we know it now really comes up from Billy Graham wanting to keep the fundamentalist theology without the ickiness of fundamentalist backwardness. And so how do I make something that how do I take fundamentalist theology and preach it at Madison Square Garden? And evangelicalism became a helpful term for that. And so I always think of Billy Graham as, like, the first and maybe the only person I know who is actually an evangelical. I think Marjoe might be the first ex-evangelical, because there is this phenomenon of people who find themselves in Marjoe's circumstances, who grow up in Pentecostalism or evangelicalism. And this is probably the case in lots of situations. I'm sure Catholics and Jews deal with this as well. But this is what I've observed. And they've left it, but they have not left it in the way that someone might leave something and just never talk about it again. They can't help but talk about it. And if you, like, there are these threads on social media where people are, they want to talk about, like, if you post a picture of Salty the Singing Songbook on Instagram, all these ex-evangelicals who grew up listening to Salt, watching those videos, who be like, blah, 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 right? It's like this moment, right? And so there's something about that, like, in the fun and games and jest of playing with the dog, or in a fun conversation with friends, you fall back on these tropes and forms and ways of speaking, knowing that you don't believe any of that shit anymore. But it's still sort of there. And I'm sure that's the case for lots of situations.
And
I think it's something particular. Like there's about, that even the idea of a category of ex-evangelical, like, it just means that you still want to talk about this thing, right? And I find that interesting.
I hear that.
And I see this as, like, a very, very early example of that. And the fact that the film comes out in 2005 again, and really gets picked up by streaming services in the 2010s, and rises in popularity then. It's kind of a proto. It's a
totally
proto. What's the Sunny Happy?
I get it.
Smiling Happy People. Shiny Happy People.
I get that, and I think it does probably land for people that way and function for people that way. In my own my own relationship to it, though, I think that if it had landed as an ex-evangelical expose, I would have found it annoying in the way that I find the Righteous Gemstones annoying at the end, because then it is this, like, what the Righteous Gemstones did by making the anti-heroes actually good people. It meant that then the joke is on the congregation.
Yes,
it's always on the congregation. And in a similar sense, this kind of, like, I can't help but keep going back to these religious elements maybe, but then but this is also maybe the reason that I don't listen to a lot of evangelical stuff is like it continues to fall into a sort of adjudicating take on the theology or the dogma or the practice or the whatever, such that the joke is always on the audience. And these are the people who are getting exploited, or these are the people who are getting manipulated, or these are the people who are getting whatever. And maybe that's true. I don't like whatever. But I found Marjoe himself much more compelling as a character and as a just whatever persona. Because to me, it didn't seem like I can't quit the religion or these elements. It was, I am a performer.
Yeah.
And so I am going to inhabit that in whatever context I get. And so I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to try to break into this kind of acting thing. Here's where I know how to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's where Marjoe, I think, again, like,
to wit, I don't know that he's an ex-evangelical because I don't think that the whole point was about whether or not he does or doesn't have faith. I thought that was a kind of side element that is a thing that exists but isn't the point. Like it wasn't about, I did believe this, but now I think that that's stupid. It was, and I've given it all up, but these people still believe, and so here's what we can do with them.
Right.
Instead, it was, I was made a performer.
Yeah.
I got good at it.
Interesting.
I remain a performer, and we're talking about that.
That makes sense. That makes sense, and that reframes that scene in a helpful. It's about the performance,
and that's why I thought that and that's why I thought that moment with the dog, I was able to see that as just like a tender, lovely little afternoon with a guy playing with his dog. And because it wasn't. But again, I could be a little too generous in my reading. Like maybe there are other, like, I don't know. But that's why I saw that as a nice little moment with his dog instead of furthering an exploitation of an audience.
Well, and I think the audience thing is important because Marjoe, and I think actually all of the pastors, even though they get represented as hucksters, I think that all of them, they respect their audience. They do not think their audience is stupid. I don't think that's the case. And I think that's what comes up in that scene where they're having lunch outside with the other pastor, because she talks about the ones who they can only bring back because they don't have anything good for the audience. It's like they don't take care of the audience, of the people, right? And it is the same thing, I think. That's where I think it's similar in pro wrestling. Like I was showing this there's like a Real Time with Bill Maher from the 90s where he's politically incorrect. Yeah. Well, yes. Where he has all these wrestlers on in the 90s and he starts off by talking about how fake it is. Like the same assumptions that we have about the Pentecostal audience members in that film are the same assumptions that people have about pro wrestling fans. Like they really think this is real. They really buy into this. And it's like, it's such an understatement, a misunderstanding of how
it's really
people can understand nuanced levels of reality and performance. But the problem is, and wrestlers generally don't see the crowd as dumb. They have to work them. They have to get a reaction from them. Oftentimes promoters do. And they usually, if you insult the audience's intelligence, you usually start to not draw, and then you don't make money, and then you fail. Whereas I think I think it's similar here. And so I think I think there's something that I find interesting about the ways we conceive from the outside, we conceive of these audiences and what we choose to think they think or don't think or believe or don't believe or whatever, that I think is worth kind of like paying attention to.
Yeah.
Because it's not about it really complicated. And I think the problem is the category religion immediately carries with it all of this baggage of authenticity.
Yeah.
So like, whereas it's not a big deal, I think it's easier to think about the performativity in like, wrestling or social media influencers or reality TV But once we introduce religion, the idea is like, oh, well, there has to be something authentic, and therefore it's a problem or wrong or immoral.
Well,
and like that, I think that as much as we can draw on these other examples to undo that in our approach to things that get labeled religion,
sure.
I think the better.
Sure. I mean, I think that there are all sorts of people who work a crowd who are absolutely exploiting their audience. Like, I think there are all sorts of televangelists who are thinking that that their audience are idiots because they're just not, or they're not thinking about them at all. Like, I don't mind taking your money and using it for myself and lying to you because I'm not thinking of you as a human at all. I'm just seeing you as a conduit for my own gain. I think that I think that absolutely exists.
Yeah.
Just because it works doesn't mean that they're taking the people seriously.
Right.
I think that that's actually Marjoe's expose, like all that he was ever ridiculing, in my opinion, or like the way that I was like the way that it was landing for me was I did feel a sense of bitterness and ridicule about the person who would say, now, if every housewife could get $10 out of the cookie jar and there would be this many people and this many radio, and he would kind of explain how that works. And then you get this much money like that. That is like, oh, holy shit. Like that's the structural way that we take money from people when we don't humanize them. Ouch. Like, so I didn't feel like it was a critique of religion or theology or dogma. It was a critique of the financial exploitation of an already disproportionately economically disenfranchised group of worshipers. So, I don't know.
That makes sense.
What's your takeaway?
My takeaway is, I don't know. I feel like I've chewed on this. I guess my takeaway from this documentary is, well, to go to your question about why are we talking about this on our cult documentary podcast?
Oh, yes, please.
I think it's because not at the moment, but so much of, like, for example, in the piece she wrote in 2005-ish or whatever, Sarah Carnosian talks about the film being important today because what is in the film now has become this, as a fringe movement in the 70s, is now a national cult or something like that, she says. So I think there's something about what the filmmakers see as a kind of debunking and a kind of expose that is very much a kind of proto-cult documentary moment. It didn't read that way in 1972 for a variety of reasons. We didn't have that, the category cult had not been thrown around to talk about Christianity for the mostly mainstream forms of Christianity at that point. So I think that to me it answers that question. And my takeaway is, I think it really problematizes how we think about these audiences and really forces us to be specific and particular when we start talking about like exploitation. Like what is the difference between putting $10 in an offering and having a 2-hour or 3-hour revival experience that emotionally helps you for the rest of the week, versus getting the old grannies with money in the cookie jar, versus paying for this magazine, versus donating to what you think is a mission trip at Haiti, but it's actually not, right? Like, there's a lot happening.
Well, so much is again, like, what is operating in good or bad faith?
Right.
What is the pretense? Like, if I spend $1 bazillion going to a Rolling Stones concert that I think is too expensive, I know what I
right.
I just swallow that pill and I think it's, I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
I think that, the question that's implicit always is like, would these people give this money if they knew that the person, and that's the kind of the question at the end of Kumare as well.
Yeah.
This like, do they still? So there were a few people who didn't, and there were a few people who didn't talk to him again, but a lot of folks were like, I'm getting something out of this relationship and this exchange regardless.
Yeah. But we never hear from these
we don't.
people, right?
Yeah.
We hear from them
Marjoe,
in more abusive situations where we hear them in the context of sort of victim stories.
Yeah.
We hear them in like obviously exploitative situations and various sorts of testimonies and things, but we don't get that audience's perspective who's came to the show, because also you don't have to give him any money if he sucks.
Sure.
Like,
and you don't have to pay to get into a tent revival.
Right.
Right.
And so now, so I think there's a lot of questions around the audience, that this, it
rejects
raises
a kind of simple or reductive reading of what a tent revival attendee is doing or up to, or what their power dynamic is in relation to the preacher. I think my takeaway is that selfhood is complicated and we shouldn't use the word performative when we mean fake.
Yeah.
Let's be technical.
We shouldn't use the word performative when we mean fake. I don't think I did that, did I? When I said performative earlier?
Oh, I wasn't talking about you.
Okay.
I mean, maybe you did, but it doesn't matter. A lot of people do. Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's. I
think you're just being performative. Yeah.
Yeah.
When am I not?
Yeah. And so if we take performativity seriously, if we think about it as this kind of notion that gives language to how it is that we even construct selfhood to begin with, and how that construction gets consolidated and sedimented into a semblance of stable identity, then that's really, really helpful when trying to look at these pieces of media, because it lends some sophistication to those very thorny dynamics that otherwise, I think, really quickly kind of fall into questions about, is he, isn't he, does he mean it, does he not, like
not to open another kettle of worms at the very end of the podcast. And we can put a pin in this for later. But like one of the categories that I keep coming back to that's like a classic in the study of religion is this idea of charisma.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's a big deal with the like cult rhetoric too.
Right. And one of the things I keep coming back to is that like charisma I'm beginning to think charisma as the effective performance of authenticity. And so because I keep coming back to both in terms of like religious leaders or cult leaders or whatever, and also this language comes up a lot in the pro wrestling stuff of like being so charismatic. In their charisma, you have to have charisma.
Right.
And I think it is a way to talk about people who actually, for whatever reason, understand what you just laid out, and then know how to move within that shifting performance of identity. And that's what we mean by, that's why they strike us as charismatic, because they understand how to move through the performances of self necessary in a particularly virtuosic way. Virtuosic, is that a word? I don't know. So yeah, that got me thinking about that.
What's your cult favorite?
My cult favorite is very broad. It is doing things you haven't done in like 20 years. Because I've been doing
like
that.
Preaching.
Yes, I guess. Oh yeah, right? He did do it. Yeah, there you go. Like Marjoe. I was like, not me.
It's. I always like building a segue or like a thread. Some connective tissue. Mine's not very connected today.
I've picked back up a little bit of the creative writing I hadn't done in forever because dissertations and things.
Yeah.
And I also
felt good.
It did feel good.
Good.
And I also going to an improv jam tonight.
Yeah, you are. Well done.
So that
enjoy.
But yeah, something else I hadn't done any stuff like. Speaking of performance, I haven't performed in like forever. So that was another, other than what I do in class on a regular basis, which is mostly improv. So I think there's stuff that like you put aside for a variety of reasons, and I think maybe that's just what 40s is going back and picking some of those things back up. But it's been fun.
The 40s are a lot of things. Well, I didn't expect to be like on a theme in that sense. But I guess I don't know. Maybe karaoke could be my cult favorite.
Yeah.
Karaoke has a lot of those dynamics of like what's authentic, what isn't, what do you get away with, in what kind of context, what do you have to be good at, what do you not have to be good at, and what what's the role of the audience. But it could be that. Also, I don't know what else is going on. The weather has been up and down a lot lately, which I've not been in love with, but spring is on the horizon. My sweet olive tree is in bloom, and I've probably opined about my deep and abiding love for that tree.
That's amazing.
But I'm just, right now in this moment, I'm renewed with like, oh, God, that smells good. Some people call it tea olive. Do you call it tea olive or sweet olive? You're more of a southerner than I am.
I don't know.
You don't even know what it is.
I haven't had to. I've never had to.
Sure, a specific kind of. Maybe they don't grow in the Carolinas. I don't know.
I have not encountered a lot of olive trees, so I don't know.
Well, this one has little tiny white flowers, and it smells incredible.
Lovely.
And it blooms multiple times through the year, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
But right now, it's coming back to life after the winter, and that's my cult favorite.
Yay!
Trees and karaoke.
Well, trees and karaoke.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening. Special thanks to the REL Digital Lab and the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Alabama for production assistance. Nothing we just said is at all expresses any represents anything.
My generous read of Marjoe is my own.
That's right. Does not represent the University of Alabama or anyone else except the two of us. And we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.